The Christian and Missionary Alliance built and operated the school. And the teachers and the dormitory parents, they were all Christian and Missionary Alliance missionaries. They answered directly to headquarters.
We would have about a 500-mile trip. It could take 2 or 3 days. It was very, very dangerous. It was no paved roads. It was all in back dirt roads. We had to cross 2 or 3 very large rivers by ferry boat. Sometimes it was just pulled across. It was a trek through the bush of Africa. So it was always kind of a traumatic experience just to get over to Mamou.
The school was about 1,000 miles away from where we lived. But it was as close to me as a child as we are to the moon. Once you're there, you're there. And you don't come back until someone is there to bring you back.
9 months was the normal length of time. And during that 9 months, you never saw them one time. As a matter of fact, I don't think I ever saw the boarding school. You were encouraged to not go there, not interfere with their lives. There was a lot of strong pressure of good parents don't cry when their kids leave.
My older sister Diane, my younger brother John, and I were separated for 9 months. Halfway through that, my youngest brother Rich, who had not turned, he still had about 3 weeks to go before he turned 6. But he was put, kicking and screaming on a truck with people that he had never met and sent on that 500-mile journey that we had just made, 3 or 4 months before that, to come and join us.
And my father, who was very strong, had real difficulty. He literally had to pry me away from my mother. And of course, both of them were crying, and I was screaming, I don't want to go, I don't want to go.
He was really too young too. I mean, I was too young too, but I had at least been 7 when I got there. He showed up and he had just turned 6, or was about to turn 6.
I remember stepping out of the power wagon. I'm just a little tiny kid, 5 years old, and all these children running around me. There's tremendous confusion, and a lot of the kids were older kids, so I'm looking at their knees, knees or waist level, trying to look through this maze. And then all of a sudden I got scooped up by my sister Diane, and she just gave me a bear hug. And it was so wonderful, I remember, I'll never forget that. She just kind of rocked me.
He was just this little kid with his hair cut real short and totally in shock, And I sort of went back to my experiences of 4 months earlier of yeah, that's what it feels like, You're really in for it. And I told him right away, I said, it's really bad. It's bad.
It made no sense to me, and I couldn't explain, where are my parents and why has this happened to me? Why have they done this to me?
I mean, those bells were ringing constantly, and every time the bell rang, you knew that you had to do something, and especially if you were new, you didn't necessarily know what that was. But the way it would happen is after school was out, you would have time to play, so there would be playtime, and then the first bell would ring. Well, when the first bell would ring, that was when the youngest kids would go to take their shower. Well, I would always jump up and scurry and go to help him. I mean, as the older brother, I wanted to make sure that he knew what he was supposed to do and to help him. Well, about the 3rd day that I did this, I jumped up, and no sooner had I turned than I ran right into Grace Wright, and she stopped me and she says, "You cannot help your brother John. He's got to learn how to do this by himself. He needs to be responsible for his own actions. You cannot help your brother." So, I mean, it was very difficult for me. I just had to turn around and, obey and do all of that. And it, they had a way of separating out siblings, and making everybody responsible. And he was only 6 or 7 years old.
And this was by design. They did not want us kids communicating with each other or having any kind of a support network.
We weren't supposed to feel bad or homesick because that's not what God wanted. Because our parents were to be missionaries and therefore we had to go to school and therefore that's what God wanted and therefore these feelings that we had of homesickness were to be done away with.
I thought that my parents had sent me to Mamou because I was a bad girl, and that if only I could show them how good I was, that I was a good girl, they would come and get me again. So it set up a pattern of me trying very, very hard to be a very, very good girl, and hoping that they would come and get me. Didn't happen.
Basically, there were two worlds going on. There was the academic world and there was the dormitory world. And most of the problems were in the dormitory world as opposed to in the academic world, other than with Miss Wormley.
You know, I've gone all the way through academics, all the way through the PhD level and tenured as a professor and all that, but the academic pressure has never been as high as it was in those first 2 years, because there was a lot of physical and verbal and social kinds of punishment that were meted out.
I remember her turning desks over, getting so angry she'd just come up to us and just turn the desk over with us sitting in it.
I remember kids having to go up to the blackboard and they couldn't get the answer, and I remember Dorothy Wormley's voice escalating and escalating, saying, you know, what is the answer? What is the answer? And taking yardsticks, and I can remember her breaking yardsticks, beating kids.
I can still see in my mind's eye this little girl, first grade girl ahead of me, kept raising her hand, you know, and what started off as just a request, can I go to the bathroom, that was repeated to the point where this little girl was begging, I need to go to the bathroom. I will never forget. The girl finally crossed her arms on her desk and laid her head down and just started weeping. And then I watched as the urine rolled off from the back of her chair and just rolled onto the floor, you know, and dripped. And that little girl had to sit there in sheer humiliation, having wet her pants in front of everybody.
And the teacher would act like nothing happened, too bad for you. You know, just sit there in it. That's part of your punishment. You couldn't hold it in, that's your problem.